Well, good afternoon. My name is Gene Hilliard. I'm Vice President Financial Advisor of Emerge Financial Group. We're a financial services company in Oakland. We provide accounting services to small businesses, financial planning. We also do tax preparation for our clients. Um, I was hired roughly, or my firm was hired roughly 12 years ago to provide retirement planning, investment advice, retirement planning education to county employees. It's an honor, it's a pleasure to be able to speak with you folks today. A little bit more about my background. I'm a licensed stockbroker. I've been licensed for roughly 19 years, helping each and every one of my clients create wealth, maintain their wealth throughout the lifetimes of their children, God willing, their grandchildren as well. I'm also a certified retirement counselor, and my goal as a certified retirement counselor is to help each and every one of you maintain your current lifestyle in retirement. What exactly does that mean? I want you to get 100% of your salary. So, whatever salary you're getting today, my goal is to help you get to 100%. We'll talk a little bit later about it. You don't need 100, but hey, the way I see it, let's shoot for 100% if you have time. You have some years to go. Let's shoot for 100%. And if we need to settle for something less than that, then we'll do that. Okay. I just wanted to briefly just share a quick story. A couple weeks ago, I'm 50 plus, so occasionally I can't sleep. So many folks, they'll log onto their phone and they want to take a look at funny videos. Well, I'm a bit of an oddball. I like to learn a little bit about financial planning, about building wealth. And I ran across a video that I thought was very interesting. This guy was talking a lot about creating wealth, building wealth, and the importance of getting rid of people that are in your circle that are preventing you from building wealth. He was talking a lot about, you sometimes you have friends, sometimes you have family members that are constantly being negative, constantly discouraging getting promotions at work for whatever reason, constantly kind of in your pocket for something, constant drama. And he was saying, with friends and family like this, who needs enemies? I'm like, wow, that's pretty interesting. He also talked about if you hang out with nine broke people, we all know what broke means. I'm not as politically correct today, but you hang out with nine broke people, nine times out of 10, you're going to be the 10th broke person. So I thought that was also very, very insightful, very, very interesting. Right. And then lastly, he talked about how it's important that if you want to do better, right, it's important that you know better. And we all know what that means. Let me say that again. If you want to do better, it's important that you know better. So, my job today is to encourage each and every one of you, make sure that you know better, right? At the end of this presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. We're talking about gearing up for a greater future. So many folks that are on this call, you're looking at probably less than 3 years maybe before retirement. And time is of the essence. You want to know exactly what is needed going forward. So we're going to dive into that in a little bit of detail. So, a journey without a destination oftentimes can feel a little overwhelming, right? So that's why we continually stress the importance of planning for the future and kind of knowing your next steps, right? So here are the retirement mile markers we're going to discuss today. We're going to talk a little bit about conducting a situation analysis. We'll talk a little bit about retirement income. What's the appropriate percentage of your income that should be withdrawn from your account to ensure you never run out of money? We'll talk briefly about Social Security. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of detail on health insurance. Mike does an excellent job of covering that in terms of Medicare, and he already covered that. So I'm not going to touch on that much. I'll talk briefly about estate planning. I'm not an estate planning attorney. I know enough to get myself in trouble, but I know a little bit. We're going to talk about a drawdown strategy. And lastly, we're going to address that question the person had earlier on about the required minimum distribution. So A good place to start is by reviewing your current situation. I know many of you are probably still feeling the financial effects of COVID-19, so it's a good idea to understand how your saving habits might have changed and what you can do to stay on track. So, when we get off this call, or if you have time to go through this now, I want everyone to write down what your retirement savings account balance is today, right? So we're going to write that down. Where do we stand? I want everyone to log on to ssa.gov to get comfortable with exactly what your Social Security benefit will be if you're eligible. Because there's probably some folks that are safety employees that may or may not have even paid into Social Security, so it doesn't apply. Some of you work for government agencies where your Social Security benefits may be reduced because of the fact that you have a pension. Nevertheless, that's all a part of the ssa.gov website, right? The other thing you want to do is to write down the available assets you have that are earmarked for retirement. So, for example, if you have some equity built up in your home, that could be potentially part of your retirement strategy, right? Your current expenses. What are my expenses today? You want to write that information down on an Excel spreadsheet. You want to project out your future expenses, right? Let's say hypothetically your house is going to be paid off in the future. So there's a mortgage payment that's going to go away. Now, don't forget, you still got to pay taxes and insurance, but that will affect your future expenses. Maybe your youngest son or daughter will be graduating from college by the time you retire. So there's a few $1,000s that you don't have to pay monthly, right? So that could affect your future expenses. So you want to write that information down. Okay. Now, many financial professionals, including myself, suggest that you need about 80% of your current income to maintain your current lifestyle in retirement. Now, remember earlier I did say let's shoot for 100, but if we have to settle for 80, then so be it, right? So, where does this 80% come from? Roughly 33%, and this is not necessarily Alameda County employees, but roughly 30%, 33% of Americans' retirement income comes from Social Security. Now, I'm sure there are many of you on the call or on this webinar that feel, hey, I don't even know if Social Security is going to be around by the time I retire. Well, I'm here to say I'm fairly confident Social Security will, in fact, be around by the time you retire. Now, it may or may not be your grandparents or your parents' Social Security, may be a little bit different, but it will still be around, right? As a country, we tend to not make changes to government programs until we absolutely have to. And right now, we still have enough money to pay out Social Security benefits, and we won't truly make the necessary changes until we have to. So that's years away. For many Americans, roughly 20% will come from a pension. That does not apply to you. Uh, on average, if you can put in 20, depending on your tier, whether you're tier 2 or tier 4, I doubt if there are any tier 1 folks still around or still working. But if you're tier 1 on the call, you're probably looking at 90% of your salary being paid. In this particular case, we're talking about your typical American, 20% will be a pension. This may or may not apply to you. Roughly 4% will come from other sources, inheritance, uh, I don't know, hitting the lotto, and then you have lastly a whopping 43% is going to come from your 457 deferred comp, or if you have a 401k at a previous employer, IRAs, bank account. It also includes working because let's face it, there are some folks who, for whatever reason, did not put enough away towards retirement and they have to go back to work. Now, I'm all for going back to work because you want to, but I have a significant issue with folks that have to go back to work, such as working at a greeter at Walmart. I'd have to say that I have failed as the plan's financial advisor. If anyone has to go back to work, such as working at Walmart. So let's try to prevent ourselves for being put in that position to have to go back to work. Let's put a little money away, put our pennies away towards retirement because it's coming. Okay. Now, when you're mapping out a savings plan, it's always a good idea to know, as I mentioned before, the milestones ahead. So let's talk a little bit about milestones. So you're 50. Once you turn 50, you're eligible to make catch-up contributions, right? So if you're for 2021, if you're contributing, if you're under 50, you can put away 19,500. If you're 50 and over, you can put away $26,000 a year. Okay. FYI, rates are going up, maximums are going up for deferred comp. So if you're 50 and over, you can put away $27,000 a year. So I encourage you, let's work towards getting as close as possible to that 50 and over max. Once you turn 50 and 59 and a half, you're eligible to take disbursements from retirement plans without an early withdrawal penalty. That's roughly 10%, right? So if you have a 401k, you have an IRA at a previous employer, et cetera, if you're 59 and a half, you can withdraw your money and it's not subject to the 10% penalty. Now you're still on the hook for taxes, but you're not subject to that 59 and a half penalty. Another note, deferred comp. If you've only contributed to deferred comp, which is a 457 plan, there is no such thing as a penalty on withdrawals. So once you leave county service and you want to withdraw money from deferred comp, you never have to pay a penalty regardless of your age. So let's just keep that in mind. But if by chance you rolled over money from an outside employer that is subject to that penalty and you rolled it in, even though it's in deferred comp, it's still subject to those penalties. Now, just because you can withdraw this money without a penalty doesn't mean necessarily that you should, right? You should only withdraw this money in the case of when you retire. Don't do it while you're still working because that could sacrifice and put you in a bad situation in retirement. Age 62 is the earliest you can collect Social Security, but if you collect it early, right, you're going to be subject to taking a 30% hit in terms of what you could receive at full retirement age. Okay, I would also discourage you from collecting Social Security while you're still working. Just because you can doesn't mean necessarily that you should, because it could affect your retirement. 65 is the age that you can sign up for Medicare. 66 roughly is the age in which you can collect Social Security benefits, full retirement benefits. But remember, it's not 66. I mean, your birthday at age 66, depending on the year you were born, it could be 66 in 2 months or 66 in 5 months. So you want to log on to the ssa.gov website to confirm exactly when full Social Security benefits apply to you, right? You can also elect to delay your retirement, your Social Security to age 70 if you'd like, right? So you'll get, a significant bump in your Social Security benefit if you wait till age 70. Typically, people always ask me, all right, when's a good age to collect Social Security? When can I get the most bang for my buck? It's very challenging to know exactly when. Why? Because most of it's based upon your life expectancy. None of us know exactly when we're going to die, or many of us don't. Right? So typically, if you have some good genes, you anticipate living into your 90s or even 100, then when you do the math, collecting Social Security at age 70 makes the most sense. Right? But anyone has heard my presentations over the years, they recognize I always talk about those phases of retirement. You have your go-go phase, your slow-go phase, and your no-go phase, right? That go-go phase is when you first retire. You're young. You can deal with the chaos at airports, right? You're spry. And then at some point you move into your slow-go phase. You don't get a warning. You just can't rip and run like you used to, right? And unfortunately, you're going to get to that no-go phase where you're pretty much in the house all day, every day, right? So wouldn't it be a shame to wait until age 70 and then you slip into the no-go phase? You didn't even have a chance to enjoy your money. So I encourage folks, the best time in many cases, full retirement. So 66 and whatever months. If you're born after 1960, I believe it's 67. So those food for thought, I want you guys to think about it. And 72 is when you're required by law, assuming you turn 72 or if you're 70, if you turn 70 and a half prior to January 1, 2020, then you have to continue to collect your required minimum distribution. But if you turn, so any person who is younger than that, age 72 is the age in which you're required by law to take out that minimum. I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. Okay, so let's talk to folks who are under 50. What you should be focusing on. Remember, I said uh, the maximum if you're under 50 is 19,500. Is 20,500 in 2022. You want to focus on trying to get to that max. Continue accumulating assets. Review your asset allocation strategy. Maybe when you were 20 years ago, you were young, you recognize that the younger that you are, the more aggressive you should be. Take a look at your risk tolerance. Has it changed since then? Maybe it's not appropriate for you to go all in stocks at your age, maybe at 45, right? So review that. Review your retirement strategy. Is it appropriate to put more money in the Roth version of deferred comp versus the pre-tax version of deferred comp, right? So you want to take a look at that when you're under 50. When you're 50 and over, I want you to, focus on maxing out and catching up. Think about estate planning. Beneficiary is also very important, and we'll talk a little bit about that right now. So as I mentioned earlier, 2021 workplace plan. If you're under 50, you can put away 19.5. If you're 50 and over, you can put an additional, 6,500, bringing you to a total of 26,000. In an IRA, 6,000 if you're under 50, $1,000 if you're 50 and over. As I mentioned also in 2022, the workplace plan limits have increased. If you're under 50, it's 20,500. And if you're 50 and over, it's 27. IRA maximums have not changed in 2022. So keep that in mind. You can also take advantage of the last 3 years special catch-up. Great program. Allows you to put away $39,000 a year for 3 years. And typically you want to take advantage of that when you're close to retirement, your last 3 or 4 years towards retirement, but you got to qualify. So I encourage each of you, if you're interested, reach out to Darnell Williams. So that's DARNELL.Williams@acgov.org. Just tell him, hey, I heard Gene's presentation. He talked a little bit about that 3 year special catch up. Want to see if I'm eligible. And he'll run the numbers, see if you're eligible, and then he'll tell you what to do going forward. So if you have some money sitting in a credit union, earning 0.10%, not earning any money, you may want to consider transitioning some of that money into deferred comp. Now, you just can't write a check and put it in deferred comp. It has to come from your payroll. So what a lot of people do is they will say, all right, Gene, take half my check. You get paid, your check is 50%. You can use your savings on the outside to supplement your bills. So if you have any questions, call me. We can discuss that a little bit later. Another important consideration is estate planning. Very, very important. When you're creating an estate plan, it helps you address some of your concerns regarding taxes, determines whether or not a simple will or a trust is enough. When I was coming up, all my community and folks in my family talked about was a will. So many of you on the call may think, well, I have a will. I don't need anything else. Well, I'm here to tell you a will's not enough if you have any significant assets. Now, coming up, like I said, everyone had a will. Well, we didn't have anything. So there wasn't a whole lot to protect. Folks had a car they may want to give to a loved one, maybe $1,000 in the bank. But if you bought a house 40 years ago in Berkeley, that same house could be worth $1 million right now, 1 million plus, right? And it may be important to put that money in or put that house in the name of a trust, right? Extremely important. It'll save your beneficiaries a extreme amount of money, right? So let's say hypothetically you had a house, you passed away with a house all paid off, and it's now worth $1 million. Guess what? You have an estate planning, or I'm sorry, just a regular probate attorney is going to make $250,000 on that, right? Versus if you paid a few $1,000s for a trust, your beneficiaries will keep all of that money in their pocket. You've worked so hard for. So I'm sure some of you on the call are probably thinking, well, Gene, where do I go to deal with a will or a trust? I would encourage first start with EAP, the Employee Assistance Program. Reach out to those folks. They may be able to hire an estate planning attorney at a reduced rate. Okay. So some of you have, I believe it's Met Legal or Met Life or Met something. They can also help you with hiring an estate planning attorney. So I want you to get on top of that, right? Make it easy on your beneficiaries. I have an uncle that just recently passed away, and we play golf at this golf tournament through, I think it's the East Oakland Youth Development Center. They have a golf tournament every year. I play golf with him. I was telling my uncle, hey, you need to get an estate plan. My uncle would laugh. I'm like, I don't need that. Let my boys fight over this money. And he did. He passed away recently, and that's exactly what my first cousins are doing. They're fighting over this money, and it's pretty sad. So I would encourage folks, create an estate plan, put your wishes on paper. It's hard enough. Your loved ones will definitely miss you, and it just makes it easier on everyone if your wishes are all written down somewhere. Okay, and trusts help you skip and avoid probate. Probate is that process where, it goes in the paper. If you don't have a trust, it goes in the paper, stays in the paper for 6 to 12 months. You have loved ones who come out of the blue who say they should inherit some of this money. So you got a cousin Betty, who shows up at court and say, "Well, cousin Annie said she was going to give me this money." When it's not true. You haven't talked to cousin Betty in 30 years, right? So it's important to get those affairs in order. Okay. Creating a trust, a will, healthcare directors, power of attorneys, all of that, right? Naming beneficiaries also very important. Any money that you have in retirement where you've designated a beneficiary avoids probate. So you never have to worry about that. So make sure your beneficiaries are up to date, right? And you can do that by logging onto the Prudential website and just simply entering your beneficiaries. Now, some of you probably have logged on. You've noticed there's no beneficiaries there. Oh my gosh, I don't have beneficiaries. Well, actually, you do. When you first signed up for deferred comp, there would have been a beneficiary form. So if you want to confirm truly who your beneficiaries are, you can reach out to Darnell Williams or anyone at the treasurer's office under deferred comp, and they can pull the file of your beneficiaries. But you can simply just go in and enter either the old beneficiaries or your new beneficiaries on the site, and that will act as the official record. Okay, let's talk briefly about tax diversification. That's that process where you want to have a little bit of money coming from accounts that have already been taxed, and then you want some money in retirement coming potentially from accounts that haven't been taxed. So here's an example of what I would call tax diversified. So let's say you're retired. You're pulling $50,000 out of your deferred comp that you've invested pre-tax, right? You're going to pay, and this is just an estimate, $6,000 in taxes. So that means you're going to net 44,000, right? But what if you had some money in the Roth version of deferred comp, and you had some money in the pre-tax version of deferred comp, and you took out $25,000 each? Guess what? Cut your taxes in half. You put more in your pocket. Okay. Typically, I always encourage folks, talk with your CPA, talk with your tax preparation person to kind of determine whether or not, creating a tax diversified strategy makes sense for you and your family. Or you can reach out to me. I can help you with that. Okay. Here's you're at 60 plus. You want to start thinking about when to take Social Security, determining your full retirement age, right? Calculating your benefits and taxes. So let's talk about full retirement age. So you remember earlier I talked about the ages in which you are considered full retirement age according to Social Security. So here they are. You're born between 1943 and 1954. It's exactly on your birthday, age 66. Versus to the far right, if you were born 1960 or later, full retirement in terms of Social Security is 67. But remember, I want each of you to log on to the ssa.gov website to determine when exactly is your time to collect Social Security at full retirement. If you've paid into Social Security for 10 years, 40 quarters, you're eligible for Social Security, right? Doesn't have to be consecutive quarters, just has to at least be the 10 quarters or 10 years, which is 40 quarters. Okay. Calculating your benefits, typically what happens is the federal government looks at a 35-year earning history to determine what your Social Security benefits will be, right? Some of you, maybe you haven't worked 35 years. So in that particular case, say you work 30 years. Well, 5 years would be considered zero, so that will reduce your benefit, right? So earning history is important. You want to make sure that it's accurate. So that's why, again, it's important to log on to ssa.gov to determine that. Okay. The joy of delayed gratification. It's a little overrated, in my opinion. But here's an example of a person age 62. They're collecting 18,000 a year in Social Security benefits. If they waited until age 66, they'll get 24. Now, I'm all for delaying between 62 and 66. But where I take a step back is between 66 and 70. But you will get a bump in your Social Security if you wait until age 70. Okay, so I've already talked about what my opinion is. I recognize, all money is not necessarily good money. I know that folks want to get the most bang for their buck, and you will get that at age 70. But again, it all depends on exactly when you anticipate passing away, okay, which is an unknown, okay? All right, let's talk about taxes. I'll just briefly talk about that. If you're single and you're collecting Social Security and you're bringing in less than $25,000, then your Social Security won't be taxed. $32,000 if you're married. Taxes on Social Security start to go up over time, depending on how much you make. So here's a bit of a chart on how that works. If you're single, you make between 25 and 34, 50% is taxable, and so on and so forth. So check on the ssa.gov website to confirm that particular information. Okay. 65 is the age in which you can sign up for Medicare. I'm not going to go into details on that, but I will say in terms of withdrawal strategy, this is important. You want to determine when or how much is appropriate to pull from deferred comp when you do retire. I believe in that 4% number as a starting point. So you take whatever your retirement asset balance is, and that's exclusive of Social Security or your pension, just your deferred comp or your IRAs or 401k. Take 4% of that, and that's roughly how much you can take out at a max in a year. 4% is a good number as a starting point. You want to adjust it every year. Maybe some years your account balance is starting to drop a little bit. Maybe we're suffering through a bear market. So maybe the following year you have to take out 3% versus 4%. But it's a moving target. You want to take a look at that every January to determine how much is appropriate to take out. But if you don't need it, then I would encourage you sit on that money because you never know when an emergency may arise. Okay. I'm going to skip the health insurance. People ask me this all the time, moving on to whether or not you should keep your money in deferred comp. Full disclosure, it's in my best interest for you to keep your money in deferred comp. Why? Because as the account balance in total grows, my compensation percentage still stays the same, but obviously it's going to increase as the account balance increases, right? But I will say this, there's a little over $1 billion in this plan. And we know how this industry works. The more money you have, the better your fee breaks are, right? The better the performance in some cases, the better the actual investments, right? So we encourage you, leave the money in the plan. There's no commissions, so you don't pay any commissions. You have actively managed index funds that you can invest in. You got a stable value fund that pays roughly, I think it's 1.7% a year, which is decent. You have penalty-free access to your money. So regardless of your age, once you leave county service, you have access to your money. But let's face it, there's 12 investments. They're very good investments, but they're 12, and they're mutual funds for the most part. Maybe you want to invest some of your money in real estate. Can't do it in deferred comp. So if you need to roll your money out to an IRA to invest in real estate, makes sense. Or maybe you want to invest in stocks. You don't want to invest in mutual funds. We don't offer that. So I would encourage you, all right, move that money over to an IRA. Okay. But I encourage everyone, really take a look at exactly how much you're going to be paying, whether you leave it or you move it. Right now, I'm a licensed broker. I have a practice and I do charge for my services, but I also make it known, you pay me 1.5%. I'm confident I'm going to get you this sort of rate of return that exceeds what's going on in the market. And it may be worth it. But if you have a person who's going to charge you an arm and a leg, and they're consistently giving you negative returns, or when you do the background homework on them, they're giving you negative returns, then it's not worth it. Many times you get what you pay for. So do your homework, do your due diligence. If you need some help with that, just let me know. Okay. Turn your savings in retirement income. We talked about the 4%. It's extremely important. Look at that from every year. Always remember also there's risks in retirement, right? I know many of you are thinking, I'm accumulating assets, I'm dealing with a lot of risk, but there's risk in retirement, right? So market volatility is a risk, right? Inflation is a risk. Inflation runs roughly 3% a year. So you can't run and hide in the stable value fund or the guaranteed interest account, which is paying 1.7. So if you're earning 1.7, cost of goods and services are 3% or more a year, you're losing money, right? Cost of living, rent's going up, mortgages are going up, PG&E, water, garbage, everything is pretty much going up. So you want to make sure that your money is keeping up with that. And then you have your longevity risk, which is, again, that risk of running out of money, right? And let's talk a little bit about that. The age of a woman who's 65 today can expect to live until they're 87. A man, 84. 1 in 4 folks are going to be 90 plus. Will your money last 30 years? That's a question you have to ask yourself. And I can help you determine whether or not that is the case. Let's come up with a strategy. Okay, 65, Medicare, we talked about that. As I mentioned before, Mike did an excellent job of going through that. So I'm going to skip that section. And then you have the impact of taking Social Security benefits later. Talked a little bit about that as well. This is a chart that outlines how your Social Security benefits increase from full retirement age to age 70. So you get a 32% bump in benefits in Social Security if you were to wait until age 70, right? Is it worth it to you? It's up to you. That's your call. Social Security, if your spouse never paid into Social Security, they're entitled to 50% of yours. right? That doesn't affect your benefits. So they can get 50% and you're going to get your full benefits. So there's some spouses out there that just assume they're not entitled to Social Security. That 50% of yours could help you in retirement. So check on the ssa.gov website for that. Required minimum distribution, you must start taking it at age 72, right? And that's or 70 and a half if you've turned 70 and a half before January 1. While you're still working, you're not subject to the minimum required distribution. So don't worry about it. You're not subject in deferred comp. But if you're 70 plus and you have an IRA on the outside, or you have a deferred, you have an IRA or another deferred comp on the outside, or 401k on the outside, that in fact is subject to the RMD. So you want to make sure you take that money out. But if all you have is deferred comp and you're 70 plus and you're still working, you're not subject to the minimum required distribution. But once you stop working in that same year, you got to take that money out. Why? You don't do that, you're going to get hit with a 50% penalty of what you should have taken out. So if you have a pretty significant balance in deferred comp and you miss taking some money out, it could be a hefty penalty. I know some of you are probably thinking, well, Gene, how much is it? Well, the amount is based upon the life expectancy tables, but I will give you ballpark, it's about 4%, maybe even 5%, depending on your age, of your account balance. So keep that in mind. Okay. So with that in mind, we're at the end of the presentation here. I just want to encourage folks, remember in retirement, there's some risk associated with it. You have your inflation risk, you have your longevity risk, there's still some risk. If you're not in deferred comp, it's never too late. It's never too late. Log on to prudential.com/retire-wow. Prudential.com/retire-wow. Click on enroll. Every little bit counts. It's never too late. Put in as much as you can. Okay. When you log in, when you're signing up, you're going to be asked for your employee ID number, your name, an email, and link will be sent to you. One of the questions people get tripped up on or they stop the process is beneficiary socials, right? We need to know who is this money going to go to if something were to happen to you. So we want you to, I would encourage, if you don't remember or don't have their social security numbers handy, just put a name and the percentage, put a phone number and address, keep it moving. You can enter the social security numbers later. Another area folks get tripped up on and they stop is the investment piece. I would encourage, just choose a moderate or a conservative portfolio for a person who's going to retire at 65. That's the goal maker models. Those are the award-winning models that were created by Morningstar and by Prudential. You'll need to tell us what your risk tolerance is. You'll need to tell us what when you anticipate retiring, and we'll create a portfolio for you. Keep it moving. You can always schedule an appointment with me to discuss whether or not that's appropriate for you. Speaking of which, to get in contact with me, my telephone number is 510-562-6355. That's 510-562-6355. Okay. My email address is g_Hilliard, HILLIARD, @emergefinancial.com. There are 3 advisors in the plan, myself in the middle here. There's Mark Tomei on the left with Wells Fargo Advisors, and you have Jason Brumman on the right. Another way to get a hold of us is to contact this 855 number, 855-969-4572. Hit option, I believe it's 3 to schedule an appointment, or you can log online here at prudential.com/retire-wow to schedule an appointment. Okay, so with that in mind, my hope is, I remember early in the presentation, I talked about, hey, to do better, you got to know better. My hope is that after this presentation, we all know better. Many of you probably do, but I want you to spread that gospel to the folks that are in your communities. Spread this gospel we just talked about with folks that you work with, so we can make sure that we're all on a better financial path for our future. So with that, I will turn it back to Mike.